Hey there, this is Aga, the Certified Holistic Health Coach here at Candida Cleanser. And today I have a special guest with me. She's a good friend of mine, Mareike, a Certified Holistic Nutritionist and Metabolic Balance Coach and owner of Empowerment Through Nutrition here in Vancouver. And we actually met last summer and we became really good friends. And recently I found out that she actually did the Candida Cleanser before we ever even met. And I was super thrilled to find out another health practitioner who is like so stoked about the Candida Cleanser because not that many practitioners know about it. So today we are joined with Mareike, and she's going to share her recovery story. And I bet we're going to geek out on a bunch of health stuff, that's for sure. So yeah, Mareike, welcome. Thank you for coming here, for sharing your story. And yeah, please do tell how you got into nutrition. How did you find out about it, Candida? Because I know like many of us health practitioners, we are health practitioners because of our own poor health growing up. And then, we just find out that the health system isn't actually helping us, and we really have to take our health into our own hands and do our own research. So I'm really curious to hear about your journey.
Oh, thank you so much, Aga. Thank you so much for having me here and sharing my story, because I think it's, we all kind of go through it, and it's really important to, share how we all kind of have all these different experiences. And my journey really started a couple years ago. So I'm originally from Germany. So my whole body, my whole microbiome is actually very different to, let's say, North America. And for me, I wasn't really aware of a lot of symptoms, but it started feeling, tired and brain fogged, and, my body was aching, and especially indigestion, constipation were the main big factors where I realized something is not right with my body. And at that time, when I moved out here to Canada, I just started, or I basically was eating the same way I was eating back home in Germany. And it was like breads and cheese and lots of sugar stuff too. So that's where I, over time, I had this like weird rash on my chest, and that was the point where I was like, something is not right. So I went to a naturopath, and she kind of did a little bit of blood test. But she was mentioning something about Candida, and at that time I literally had no idea. I wasn't in food or in the health and wellness profession. So she ran a couple tests, and everything seemed to be fine. I had a little bit of high histamine levels, but other than that, she was like, well, maybe there's something not right with the food that you're eating here, since you're from Germany. So that change in your gut microbiome is taking a bit longer, and it's actually a little bit difficult right now at this point. So that was kind of like, okay, I'm going to start looking into it. And then I met my partner, and a couple months later he developed a huge Candida systemic overgrowth, and I had still no idea what that was, and he didn't know at that time either. So what we did, he was prescribed antibiotics, and we did a little bit of research and realized that it could have been a Candida overgrowth, but none of the doctors was saying anything about this. It was literally, here's the pill, here's some antibiotics, and maybe take some probiotics just in case. So
what were some of his symptoms? You said like a full-blown systemic Candida. What were some of his symptoms?
Yeah, it was really, I didn't see him for 2 weeks. It was really tough because we literally just met, and it was, that whole, like flirting state. And he just texted me, and he's like, I feel horrible. I feel tired. He had like flu-like symptoms. His whole body was aching. He had like white spots that actually started way earlier than before this Candida outbreak. And yeah, so they started growing and kind of like going over his whole body, and he just felt like crap. He couldn't get up. He had his stomach was aching, and yeah, it was tough because I had no idea what was going on, and he was like, I think it's Candida. So as soon as he kind of felt better again, we looked more into it, and that's when I realized, I'm like, let's just try this. Let's change our diet up. And yeah, like within a couple weeks, everything kind of cleared up and he felt so much better. And for me personally, a lot of things happened at the same time. It was kind of like the start of, oh, I feel more energized and my digestion feels way better. I'm not as constipated anymore. And my skin around in my face, I had a lot of outbreaks before, it just cleared up. And yeah, I felt in general much better. But just by following the diet, you kind of like go back at some point, or I felt like relapsing into having some gluten and a little bit of cheese, and symptoms would come back up. And it was like literally this like trial and error and seeing what, like, okay, this works, but this doesn't. And then this time it kind of felt okay, but then next time it felt horrible again. And it was mostly like, for me, it was really a lot of like gut stuff. So, and for Aaron, the same too. He has a better metabolism than I do, but for him, it was always this like mental stuff that was a little bit different than for me. And yeah, so that's kind of like the journey, how I got into the Candida. But at that time, I still didn't know about the supplements. So after, going through that whole journey with Aaron, like with my partner, I decided personally that I want to get into nutrition, because I realized, oh my God, like diet has such a huge effect on our bodies and our mental state as well. So I started my holistic nutrition program, and doing the study, it was kind of like, oh my God, it all makes sense, like how everything is interconnected, and especially how the gut has such an influence on a lot of different things. It's not just sitting down there and you're just digesting stuff. It actually is connected to your brain, so it really affects your mood and your mental state. And then later on, for me personally, was very interesting how it relates to the hormonal balance. And I kind of connected these two more and more, because I had a lot of PMS symptoms and weight gain, and my thyroid, I thought it was my thyroid, but it seemed to be okay. So it's just realizing that there's a lot of stuff in your gut. And I think a couple years ago, there was more and more coming out about your microbiome and how it changes. So yeah, that's kind of like the journey. And then I met your partner. I believe you guys were just starting to date at that time. But I knew him before from like events that I met him before, and he started talking about the Candida, and I was just like, oh my God, this is interesting. Someone talks about it. Like no one actually, like out of my circle friends or someone, is like so on and about Candida. So we had like an hour-long conversation. He's like, oh, my partner does the Candida Cleanser. She is part of the Candida Cleanser product line. And I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. So I decided to just kind of buy the supplement and really try it out, because I realized that wasn't like what I was doing wasn't actually doing a lot, if that makes sense. So you go through like, I'm going to try this and I'm going to try that, and I feel good and then I feel bad, and I felt like something wasn't really getting to the point, or like getting really deep down to the roots of whatever I'm experiencing. So and then I had friends and some other clients that were kind of expressing some sort of like distress about their bodies and how they're dealing with gut issues and menstrual cycle issues. And so I decided just to gather a bunch of friends and family as well to get on the diet so that we can actually all be in the same boat and really see if it does work for some people or not. So it's that's kind of like how I knew
Yeah.
about it. And then we started talking. I was like, this is amazing. That I feel like is very, very important. And especially when it comes down to menstrual health and in general, like gut issues, it's, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You just dumped so much. I want to unpack a few things before we continue into your story. The first thing I want to address is like, yeah, how Candida shows up in different people is so, so different. And how I like to explain it is like we all break down in our weakest links, right? So you can have Candida and have like the best digestion ever, right?
Yeah.
You can, and it's usually, I think, usually it's men. For some reason, I find this habit that men don't have the stomach issues. They're the stomach that can eat the gluten and eat the everything, and they're like, what's wrong, babe? Why can't you have some? And you have a cookie and you're like, I feel terrible.
Yeah.
However, like men will often get like the mental stuff, the brain stuff. They can be really quick to anger. They can be addicted to alcohol, athlete's foot, ringworm, rashes. It can show up in very different ways. And skin is a really big one. You mentioned he had those like white spots.
Yeah.
I think it's called like tinea
Versicolor. Yeah.
versicolor.
It's a fungus as well. So it's kind of like all related, and it just made sense for us. Yeah.
I used to have it on my chest, and I got it from, because I don't think it's directly connected to Candida. I think it's a different strain, but it uses chitin, the exoskeleton, the same exoskeleton that Candida has, that the chitin exoskeleton. So chitin is what ticks and fleas and cockroaches use, and different parasites and different fungi. There's over I think 3 like million types of fungi in your gut microbiome, right? And not all of them are great, but many of them use chitin. And so I found that, I had the same stuff on my chest and my back, and nothing would get rid of it. And then when I did the Candida cleanser, it's like all of a sudden that weird rash went away. And anytime I went to a dermatologist, they gave me like all these expensive salves and herbs, and nothing was working. And no one even told me that it was fungal. They're like, oh, it must be the pigment thing. And like, so it's definitely misdiagnosed. And that's one of the things about Candida cleanser. It's so misdiagnosed, right? Like if you go to mainstream conventional doctor, you'll be like on a wild goose chase, because many of them don't even believe that Candida is a thing.
Exactly. That's what exactly happened with my partner a couple years ago. They were like, what is this? Like, I really like, here's your antibiotics. And that makes actually things worse because you're literally deleting everything. And it took a long time for him to recover from it. And it's also like almost traumatizing. You get into this like, oh my God, I just went through this huge it was a health crisis for him, and he had to really restructure his life and kind of make different choices. But yeah.
And then the other thing you mentioned, like doing the anti-Candida diet and being like super strict, and then kind of feeling like you're yo-yoing, or like I like to call it like the whack-a-mole situation. You think you got it, and it pops its head over here. Then you think you got it, then this other symptom comes up. And I see people all the time super frustrated. The fact like, I don't get it. Like I did the diet for 30 days. I killed my Candida. Why is it still alive? And it's like, well, actually, if it's fungal, especially if it's systemic, diet alone isn't going to do anything, because it now, like the Candida is dimorphic. It can transform from yeast to fungus at will. It can go into hibernation mode. It can hide out until the perfect environment. Basically, when you succumb to another sugar cravings, you create that environment in your gut microbiome, and it can just switch and turn into a fungus again, and just like come right back. So it's such a, like, I call it the tyrant. It's such a tyrant. It's so hard to get rid of until you introduce something like the CCWS, which is the Candida cleanser that we're talking about. So it's so cool to see that you had that journey too, because I was there too, like, just so frustrated, like, why isn't anything working? I've done everything. I've done herbs, I've done acupuncture, I went down to the jungle to see shamans, and like it was like nothing's working.
So true. Yeah, it's really hard. And as you said, like every body is so different and it reacts differently and the symptomatics are differently. So it's really, oh my God, it's such a personal journey.
So
Yeah.
what happened to you on your first cleanse?
Yeah, so that was interesting. It was the most significant change that I think I've ever experienced. And I remember on day 2 how my stomach just literally felt like a flat board. You know, before that, it was always kind of like bulging out, and you felt this little bloat here and a little bit of bloat there and a little bit of gas and that kind of stuff. So it's really, yeah, it felt like there was weight lifted off me. And I saw my, my digestion moving easier and my skin started to clear up. And the other thing that I noticed was my nostrils here, all this cleared up. When I was younger, my dad always made fun of me. Like I have to breathe through through my mouth. I would always like sleep with my mouth open or like run around with my mouth open. And he would always make fun of me and stick his finger in my mouth because I couldn't breathe through my nose. Like as a regular person, you should be breathing through your nose. It should be possible, but I would be making these huge noises. And yeah, and I got tested and I was allergic to a lot of things. So I felt like that was actually the first time that I could go to bed and not feel like I'm suffocating as soon as I close my mouth. So that was another huge thing that cleared up for me. And yeah, and like underlying anxiety and some sort of like craving really dissipated for me personally. That was such a eye opener for me, for like, oh my gosh, I've been sitting in this cloud for so many years and I was never able to fully step out. You know what I mean? It's like you're sometimes, as just yo-yoing, you're kind of like, oh, this feels good and then this feels good, but that was kind of like literally stepping out of the bubble and being fully out of it and looking at it and yeah, observing of how affected I was. And sometimes you just have to go on to total opposite side to really know what was going on. And since then I've done it a second time and I'm just doing my third one, and it just feels like it's clearing up. And it's so nice to know as soon as I feel a little bit different, then I'll just go on the diet, and it helps me to do like the next step and the next step and the next step to fully clear out. And for Aaron even too, he did it the second time. When it was my second time, he did it with me, and he noticed drastic change too, of like mental clarity and having more energy. And so it was really, it's really a long journey, and I've learned so much about my body, which I'm so grateful for, because for me, there was a lot of eye opener through the whole process. And I feel like I'm now getting to the point where I'm like, this works, this doesn't work. And I'm making solid decisions because I've been through the whole trials and errors over those years, that I just know now I can't change. Like, this is just how my body works. And I can have certain amounts, but I can't overdo it. And I can't go back to where I was a couple of years ago. And it's just, it feels liberating and empowering at the same time, just to know, oh my God, I can feel so much better if I really stick to how my body works and really listen to it. And it's been such an incredible journey.
Yeah, it's I can really resonate with like the bubble being removed. And so many times when we live with an uncomfortable symptom, we've normalized it. It's kind of like we don't even realize we're living with it, like breathing through the mouth, right? And you realize after you do the cleanse and it disappears and it's this whole new way of being, and you're like, holy crap, I didn't even realize that thing was a thing. Like for me, it was eye goop. I would used to get this like cheese string goop in my eyes, and I would wake up with my eyes crusted shut.
Yeah.
And I couldn't open my eyes. Sometimes it would pull at my eyelashes. And for the longest time, like that's how I would wake up in the morning. I would have to have like a glass of water so I could get my eyes wet. and opened my eyes, and it just turned, and that was just the thing. I'm like, and a few years living with that, that's just who I am. That's just what life is like. And when that goes away, there's a whole other you create new normals.
Yeah.
Every time a layer gets peeled back, there's a new normal. There's a new baseline of how much energy you wake up with. There's a new baseline of how positive you are, or how clear your mental capacity is, or how good you feel in your belly. I know for me, like for the longest time, I felt like I couldn't wear pants or anything tight. Anything couldn't touch my belly. It was like, no, everything felt too tight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, because there's just so much inflammation. It was so uncomfortable being in my body, and I didn't realize how uncomfortable I was in my body. So what I would do is like drink alcohol to numb out, or eat to numb out. There's all these coping mechanisms to not be in this body that was so uncomfortable. But that part of that transformation of removing Candida, and all of a sudden it feels good to be in your body, and you're embodied. You're actually here and now.
Yeah, and I feel like, especially as a woman, it's already such a touchy topic, our bodies and how we feel in our bodies. And if you deal with digestive issues, then you're even more uncomfortable in your skin. And that's like the last thing I would want for any woman, to feel uncomfortable in their skin just because they feel bloated, or like internally, it's like the physical appearance is one thing, but it's the internal feeling of how your body feels is, I wouldn't want that for anyone. So.
And so to summarize it, what happened for you, so you got rid of that like chronic sinus stuffiness. You had more energy, the digestion cleared up, you felt good in your belly, there was like flat, the skin rashes disappeared, the skin disappeared, everything disappeared, and everything just got better.
Yeah. Life got better.
Awesome. And same for your partner.
Yeah. And for many other, my friends and families that kind of joined into, that were like, oh my God, like I feel so different. And yeah, it's beautiful to see.
It's so great to hear that you're like the head of the group, who's like, all right, rounded up your troops, or we're doing this together, because it's so much easier to do a cleanse like this together with community, with friends and family. And so glad that you could offer the support to those friends.
That was the major like factor as well. It's like, I'm not in this alone, I'm not doing this by myself. And I'm it's like there's so many other people that hesitate because they get scared, and it's so much easier to have a community or friends that are doing it with you, because then you can get together and you're all eating the same food. And we had like our partners or other friends are like, oh, is this Candida approved? So it's like, totally. Such a big help and support. And
and so like if you're watching this video right now and you don't have the support, I highly recommend you find us on Facebook. We are Candida Cleanser Support Group. There's myself and Patty, the other holistic health coach. We've got veteran cleansers, we've got admins, like everybody who's in there is doing the cleanse or has done the cleanse, because this is, we brought everybody together to bring this community and tribe to make it easier. And so I'm really excited to like pick your brain about women's health and just women's health, because so many women come to us who have Candida. They have endometriosis, they're infertile, they've got PMS, all of this stuff. And how Candida works on like the basic science that I know is that it actually excretes toxins, and many of these toxins directly affect the endocrine system. One passes the blood-brain barrier and goes into the pituitary gland, which is your master gland, and it's connected to your thyroid, it's connected to your adrenals, it's connected to your womanly bits, all of that. So when you start to mess with the master gland, like a domino effect, you can get hyper or hypothyroid or Hashimoto's like symptoms. You can have adrenal fatigue, adrenal burnout, endometriosis. And I've seen 5, maybe 6 women now totally reverse their endometriosis after 1 or 2 cleanses. One woman who believe her name is Charla or Sherry, and she's in our group as well. She was infertile. Her and her husband were trying for 5 years. They were kind of like hopeless and just, they gave up. They're like, fine, we're not gonna have a child anymore. And she did the cleanse, and mid cleanse, she got pregnant.
Wow, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm curious to hear how you work with women. What is your opinion on how Candida connects with the hormonal issues for women?
Yeah, so you're definitely touching base on like certain symptoms that kind of relate to the Candida, or Candida is the causative factor for all these diseases or symptoms. And one of the biggest ones actually, and that's what I'm a lot like interested in, is the estrogen dominance and hormonal imbalance in general, because through the gut we are excreting a lot of the toxins. So when we have hormone imbalances, your liver works on it and your gut hits. It's a huge function, like it's a big system that works together. And your gut, for example, takes one big part of taking estrogen, for example, out of your body, but it goes through your liver too. So there's many different aspects that we have to look at. But how Candida can work is if it overgrows, it binds to receptors. And estrogen is like, there's it's called in the microbiome, there's it's called an estrobolome, which is a group of bacteria that impacts estrogen metabolism, for example. And this estrobolome, which is a group of bacteria, produces a lot of enzymes that are called beta glucuronidase. And this enzyme binds to estrogen receptors in your gut, and it basically blocks them from getting into your gut and being excreted, if that makes sense. So what happens is that if the excretion doesn't happen, you have a buildup of estrogen, and estrogen overrules a lot. Like the whole system that works in balance is suddenly totally off balance. And that's where you can have a lot of different systems, and Candida can grow and kind of play a big part of that rise of estrogen, for example. So, and you mentioned also that it goes up into your brain and can cause a lot of stuff up there. So it's yeah, when it comes to menstrual health, it causes a lot of blocks in many different systems. And if systems don't function properly, what happens? It gets out of balance, and then you have all these different symptoms, and it can cause infertility as it affects your thyroid. It can cause PMS. So there's a lot that your gut in general has to do with the hormonal system in your body.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I love looking at how your menstrual cycle works in general. And I had a friend who was dealing with a lot of hormonal imbalances, and for her, not feeling PMS as strong after a really long time was huge. And even for me, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm not feeling crampy or my breast tenderness. Like it was, things just kind of simmered down. And the more I did the Candida cleanse, the less symptoms I had. And for me, the nutritional factors is huge. It's feeding your microbiome. It's making sure there's enough of variety in there to really help to eliminate some of the other things. And, serotonin is produced in your gut as well. So that affects, your mood during your menstrual cycle too. And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I could go on and on.
Yeah. And then not to mention that it can actually grow in the vaginal canal, right? Causing like UTIs and
Yes.
cysts and all that kind of stuff, because Candida loves to live in like the mucus, moist, damp, slimy places of our body. And, one of the most damp, moist, slimy places is in our womb and in that space. So we're kind of like, I think women show more the signs more rapidly, more quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And UTIs and that kind of stuff for sure is like related and very uncomfortable.
Mhm.
So, women that have a lot of UTIs or experience some sort of rashes, that's very uncomfortable and definitely related to some sort of gut issues, because there's so many different bacteria, and which one do you feed, which one do you suppress is very, very important in that sense as well when it comes to menstrual health.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm.
So, what do you do now when a woman comes to you and she's got, all the classic signs of Candida and she's like her hormones out of balance? As a metabolic balance coach, what do you do? What's the protocol that's part of your work?
Yeah, it actually ties in quite a bit with the Candida Cleanser diet, or let's say an antifungal diet. So the Metabolic Balance Program is kind of catered to balancing your metabolism, which has to do a lot with your thyroid. So it works on your thyroid and clearing out your gut. So the first part, for example, is a mini cleanse or detox. It's helping you to release some of that stuff that sits in your gut. It cleanses it. So I usually often recommend some sort of magnesium citrate just to loosen up the stool, clean out your bowel, and then you work on introducing certain foods, because the metabolic balance program is based on 36 different blood values. So it looks at your blood sugar levels, your homocysteine levels, your cholesterol. So everything that's has to do with your metabolism will be checked, and then a plan will be created that is literally catered only to you based on your blood values and your medical history. So if you have a history of high blood pressure or endometriosis or PCOS or insulin resistance, it helps to balance your blood sugar. And when it comes to menstrual health, blood sugar imbalance is usually causing a lot of different things in your body too, from PMS to breast tenderness. So it's always very important to balance your blood sugar in order to keep those hormones in balance, because
Mhm.
your blood sugar ultimately is affected by hormones. So it's balancing these hormones to really make sure that everything comes back in the equilibrium of how it should work. So yeah, for me, it's like it really depends on what you are experiencing and what you're looking for. I kind of have these two programs separated, but they could be combined as well. And for me, I love talking about what you know about your body. That's always my question. What do you know? What is your experience like in your day-to-day life? How's your bowel movement? How's your skin? How's your mood? How's your energy levels? How's your menstrual cycle? Is it regular? Is it irregular? Do you know if you're ovulating? How long is your menstruation? Are you losing a lot of blood? So there's a lot that really comes into play, and simply just starting to change things for me is like, when people ask me certain questions, I'm like, I'd rather have a full consultation with you, because then I get to know your body and how it works before just giving you some sort of advice, because one thing can really work for one person, but it might not work for another person. And that can actually be very detrimental for one or the other. So for me, it's always having this personal conversation. And, if you're not sure, I always recommend just let's sit down and let's really look at all the different aspects of your life, because we can't just fix one thing. We really have to integrate the whole body. And that's what the holistic approach is. And that's why I decided to study holistic nutrition, because for me, it was like, I know one pill can't just fix anything, like everything. So yeah, there's a lot to it. And for me, it's, yeah, I always look at everything, and I want to know everything as much as you can share, you know, and maybe there's other things that come throughout the whole process too. So
Yeah, I really like that bio-individuality approach, right? Like one man's poison is another man's medicine, or one man's medicine is another man's poison. And that's one of the troubles of like just going and Googling your symptoms and like just, okay, I'm going to do this supplement because it worked for somebody else and it might not work for you. And so really working with a trained professional with when recovering from Candida, I highly recommend it because there's so much more to recovering from Candida than just popping back the Candida Cleanser pill. The pill is great. It's like it will target Candida Cleanser straight on. But we have to look at like, number one, are you eliminating? Are you actually
yeah,
like going to the bathroom? If you're constipated, like first get your bowels moving. So I'm so happy you mentioned magnesium citrate or magnesium oxide, just to like flush the colon out and make sure you're going at least once a day. Otherwise those toxins, like you reabsorb those toxins. And
yeah,
when you're going and killing Candida, it's releasing over 100 toxins every single day. It's releasing heavy metals, lead, arsenic, cadmium. So are you taking a binder?
yeah.
No, never do a cleanser without a binder. There's like so many of these things, and how are you supporting your liver, and how are your detox pathways? There's so much to look at, because when Candida goes systemic, it's, you know, like you mentioned, it's hitting the hormonal system, it's hitting the immune system, it's hitting all of these symptoms, and leaky gut, for example. So we have to actually look at the whole thing and see what kind of lifestyle changes need to be put in place, what kind of proper supplementation needs to be put in place to begin to balance out the entire body. So one treatment of 45 days isn't going to,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I'm not going to sugarcoat it because sugar feeds Candida. It's not going to be the thing that cures you. It's like you showing up for yourself every single day in this
Yeah.
like bio-individualistic way, with food, with supplementation, with lifestyle practices, that is
Mhm.
going to create a healthy, thriving version of yourself.
Yeah.
And that being said, without the Candida cleanser, it is going to be just a longer journey, longer drawn out journey. When you introduce the cleanse, you can basically hop onto the fast track because you're getting to the root of the problem, so that these changes that like potentially, I see the work that you're doing and combining the two, the work can be so much more powerful because say you're eating healthy food, it's actually finally going into the body and being absorbed. But if you've got Candida there on your gut lining, you could be eating the food and you'll be passing it through, and you'll get nutritional deficiencies and mineral deficiencies. And if you're mineral deficient, you're going to have heavy metals bind into those receptors. So it's like there's so much to unpack. And I feel like today we're just kind of hitting the tip of the iceberg, and I feel like we're gonna create a series for sure,
Yeah.
an educational series for women, because I think it's so needed. There's so much to unpack here. It's like a big ball of yarn. You start tugging on one string and the whole thing just like bloop,
And
pops.
I feel like that's especially you kind of like opening up a whole can, and it's so important to really, yeah, look at all the different things and have support at the same time, because yeah, for me it was like I needed to talk to someone who really understands what's going on or can help me to understand, because some practitioners don't really have the focus. Yeah.
Mhm. Especially like during like the detox phase, anytime you're cleansing, be it Candida or not, even just doing a simple water fast or a juice fast, there's going to be a time where you feel worse before you feel better. And that's the time where sometimes our self-doubt comes in, or panic comes in, of like, oh no, I've done something wrong, this feels wrong, this is bad, and you get scared of the process. But having a practitioner is like, oh no, this is a good sign. This is
Yeah.
good, things are moving,
All
like
good.
all good, having that emotional support as well through it. It's like, okay, I'm not going crazy. Great.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not dying.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, if someone were watching this right now, considering doing the cleanse for the first time, what would be your, a few tips of how to prepare?
Mhm.
How to prepare for something like this, the Candida cleanser?
Mhm. I think we were already like repeatedly mentioning it, is if you are not 100% sure how to do it, what to do, like go and talk to someone how your like have that initial, okay, this is my normal, this is the baseline, this is how my body is functioning right now, what can I do to support that whole process, and having someone who can help you understand and prepare yourself, because I wouldn't want anyone to just run into this program and kind of go through it and be so overwhelmed with all the symptoms that potentially can come up. Maybe something doesn't come up, but it's having someone who can really be like, okay, yeah, this is normal, this is what you might feel, and just having that soothing process. Yeah, support is one big thing, is having someone who knows that you're doing it, who's professional, so that this person can help you throughout your process. And my biggest thing that I did personally before I started the Candida Client was literally cleaning up my whole kitchen, looking at like the foods that I can have and the foods that I can't have, and I put everything that I couldn't have in a box, gave it away to friends or families, like whoever wanted it, donated. But for me, it was like literally going to baseline 0. This is the stuff I can have. It's restocking the whole pantry. That was the biggest help throughout that whole process, because then there are no temptations, no cravings even, because sometimes if you look at even just a piece of fruit, it's like, oh my God, I want to have that mango, but why would I have it in my house if I can't have it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's inviting, letting other people know, if you are living with other people, your family or your partner, kind of like, okay, this is what I'm going into. I need support. Can you please eat your bag of chips or something somewhere else so I'm not getting exposed to it, so I don't crave it? Yeah, it's letting families and friends know that you're doing this cleanse so that there are no temptations. And you'd be surprised of how many people, and it was, at least for me, that were like, okay, well, we want you over, what can I make you, like what can you have, so that there are no temptations or no cravings coming up, or you can't eat because everything is carbs or sugar or alcohol or whatever. Yeah, it's like preparing yourself and really taking it as a personal journey and letting other people know that you're doing it, so they can support you. And asking for help is literally, don't get right into internet and try to research stuff, because people throw out information and sometimes can be very misleading. And having a professional, for example, will kind of like delete all of those like misconceptions about what you think or whatnot, and taking it as a personal journey too. It's like writing and feeling and observing your body, of like how you feel and what shows up and what goes away, and keeping track of it. And I feel like at the end of the 45 days, you'll be like, oh my God, that was a journey. And that would happen, because sometimes you forget too. And it's always nice just to have that little reminder of the baseline that you had then, and then the baseline you have now, and how can you further support yourself. And you were saying that too. It's like having the afterward, the integration part is such a huge aspect. And I feel like this is why I was yo-yoing so much, because I wasn't actually integrating a lot of the aspects that I've learned or that I've noticed, because I had to redo all the mistakes over and over until I was actually sitting. So I feel like that whole journey of yo-yoing can be a little bit easier if you're really integrating these parts and taking it as a personal, making your health a personal priority.
Yeah. So to tag on to what you were saying there earlier, there's two things. The first one, you were saying like to ask for support, reach out. I know there's a few people that actually struggle with partners who are unsupportive. family who are unsupportive. Like there's actually a lot of bullying from our closest friends and family members I've seen where they don't support you. You think that your loved ones would be like, I'm so happy that you are working to take care of your health. But sometimes it's the opposite. They're like, oh, why don't you just have this pasta? It's not going to kill you. And they bully you. And then you feel like terrible. And then, you know, it's so hard to stick to your diet. So one thing I would add on to that is when you're asking your help and asking for support is come from an empowered place of like, this is what I'm choosing. I can have anything I want, but I'm choosing not to have those cookies versus I can't have those cookies. So can you please not eat them in front of me? Because then the person like sees and can potentially go into bully mode. But if you're like firm in your willpower of like, this is what I choose to do. I'm choosing to do this 45-day cleanse for myself. This is how I love for you to support me. Coming from an empowered place really helps in having an elevator speech. So when you are at the restaurant and someone's like, oh, why can't you just have a drink? And you're like, I don't want to because I'm choosing to do this cleanse. I'm choosing to take my health back. Thanks though. Right?
Yeah, it's like make yourself a priority, and if other people feel uncomfortable, then they feel uncomfortable. It has nothing to do with you because you never know what they're going through. But yeah, coming from that empowered place, and you know, if it helps to stand up or ask for support or ask the person to just leave because that makes you like, it really depends on how your environment is and what you need too. And I think that's really important as well. It's like, what are the things that you need for yourself to support yourself? Yeah.
And I'm really glad you mentioned the baseline thing. It's like something I tell my clients to do is like write down all your symptoms, everything you can think of. So the quality of your sleep, how well you manage your stress, how much energy you wake up in the morning with, your skin, you know, the color of your tongue, and then rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like horrendous, debilitating, 1 being like almost non-existent and mild. Like have that baseline, and then 45 days later, check in with it, and you'll see that things shift. Things always shift, and you'll be so surprised.
Yeah. Before and after pictures. That's great because your body might change, you know, physically or physically as well. For me, I literally lost, I don't know, 6 or 7 pounds on my first round of Candida Cleanser. It was huge. And I just was like, wow, I've never been at that weight, you know, for a really long time. So that was really neat to see. And, you know, sometimes it helps to just put the picture up and be like, oh my God, this is it. Like, this is where I want to be. And this is where I feel most comfortable. And it helps to just kind of have that wow, a moment and really capture those moments because they can be helpful and supportive as well.
Yeah, we have so many before and after photos of people's faces and hands and bodies. And Nancy's is one of my favorites. She lost 50 pounds and she has blood work. She did blood work before and after, and I think she did 2 cleanses, 2 45-day treatments, and she was borderline diabetic, like hormones and things like off the charts. And then she came back and like she had perfect blood work. It's incredible to see.
Yeah, it's really interesting, like how big of an effect it has. And these before and after pictures are literally like black and white, and the proof of how important it is to get rid of it and not feed it.
Right. So one last tip I want to pick your brain with. If someone's doing the cleanse during detox, what's something you could recommend, even if it's like magnesium oxide to move the bowels, or maybe it's a certain tea like lemon water in the breakfast? Like, what is something you can do to help balance the hormones, maybe get rid of excess estrogen, like some sort of detox tip?
Yeah, I mean, you're already kind of offering the liver cleanse and the liver support. From me, when it comes to detoxifying, and especially detoxifying excess estrogen or trying to balance hormones, the main focus is always liver and gut, because these two are really a very powerful team that needs to be supported, because hormones are getting processed and detoxified through your liver. So some sort of like liver support is always recommended. There's many different supplements that you can take. You can do the herbal way. You can also, take calcium D-glucarate, for example. It really specifically targets the estrogen metabolism and detoxification. So it really depends on what you're working with. I can now say, okay, there's the whole hormonal female menstrual aspect, but then in general, like, it's always important to have a bowel movement. Magnesium citrate oxidate would be perfect for just helping to clean out. And for me, with the metabolic balance program, we always do like a little bowel cleanse before we actually enter into the whole detoxification process, because it's nice. It's very supportive and helpful just to have that clear bowel and colon to really make sure that everything can be transported out. And then for sure, whatever you're probably already recommending on the Facebook group is working on the digestive tract as well. It's like helping to heal the gut lining, slippery elm, there's what's it called, licorice. Like, there's so many things that you can do. And for me, liver support, that's really important, especially in the first phase of the detoxification. And then there's the second phase.
So what's your favorite for liver support?
I love milk thistle. That's one. And calcium D-glucarate. That's actually what I've been taking so far. And it's, for me, I have there's no side effects or anything. It really, I can feel that there's stuff moving out of my body. And yeah, so calcium D-glucarate.
I'm going to write that one down. I haven't heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I definitely agree with moving the bowels. Like, so many people just jump right into the cleanse and get through the diet. I would say, do the anti-candida diet, get rid of the sugars, the starches, the processed foods for 2 weeks, start introducing broth, maybe even try and do a 24-hour bone broth fast, maybe, 48. Fasting is not for everybody, but like 24 hours or start intermittent fasting with the broth to help that gut lining. Add the magnesium oxide to make sure that you're flushing out the toxins, and then introduce the cleanser. Also, liver supports probably for like a week before doing the cleanse can really help power that up. I know like sauerkraut and bone broth helps to create more glutathione in the liver, so milk thistle is great for that. It boosts glutathione while repairing and regenerating the liver. So really putting in that work before you jump in, and then your cleanse is going to be much smoother ride. Of course, there's always you might have die off, and that's always welcomed. For me, it's just like, yes, it's working. Thank you, Candida, for letting me know you're leaving my body, and then having the proper tools and resources in place to know what you're doing.
You're right. I love preparing your body, doing the cleanse, and then the after cleanse. So they're literally seeing it as a before, doing, and after process, and really supporting each phase of the whole journey, because that's really potent. And I feel like that is very the essence of all of it.
I like what you mentioned, integration. It's like all these things you're doing to prepare for the cleanse end up being part of your lifestyle after, because you're not going to go back to who you were, because who you were created the Candida. Candida for me is like a lifestyle dis-ease, fungal condition, because the lifestyle you've been living, from food to water to the air you've been drinking and the chemical products on your body, the thoughts in your head, the stress, it's like all of that adds up, and it's got to change. You got to create a different person.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing through the cleanse. You're getting rid of that very much like physical fungal infection, but all the things that you're doing to get rid of it is part of the new person you're going to create. So often people ask, like, when can I eat my pizza again? Well, like, hopefully when you're on the other side of it, you won't even want to eat that pizza, because it was Candida who was eating the pizza, And when you eat the pizza, you're gonna make your own like cauliflower almond crust pizza that's gluten-free and has like healthy pasteurized cheese on it, because your taste buds are gonna change and that's gonna taste good. The crap Pizza Hut stuff is gonna be disgusting and you're gonna taste it, right? So
Yeah.
I digress. So we can just
Yeah.
talk forever here. We're almost running out of time here. So yeah, unless there's anything you want to share, any last tips, or how people can find you if they really resonate with you and your work, how they can find you.
Yeah, so you can thank you for sure. Thank you again. So you can definitely find me on my website, which is empowermentthroughnutrition.com. There's a lot of information on there, also my address. And then I'm also working out of a clinic, which is a fertility clinic just here in Vancouver. So if you want to see me in person, that's possible as well, which is the Thuja Wellness Clinic on close to Broadway and Hemlock. So I do have a couple hours there as well that I'm offering. And yeah, I'm always doing online stuff as well. If you feel like virtual is easier for you, we can always set up a Zoom call. But the Metabolic Balance Program, just to kind of tighten that, you do have to get blood work done, which is super easy as well. It was a little bit difficult in the past because you would have to go to your doctor, get an approval, then go your lab test. And yeah, now the whole doctor part is gone because we do have an online doctor that will automatically approve it, which is the bonus, because that helps to get away from that extra journey to the doctor. So that's pretty much it.
Right. Good. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and I'm really looking forward to speaking again. And there's just so much we can unpack around women's health and empowerment, all this whole Candida journey. So really looking forward to having you back.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I really had a lot of fun to kind of like geek out and get to know you a bit more and to actually really start this whole journey, because I feel like there's so much out there that we can do. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I really look forward to working together and really changing people's lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. And I'll see you next time.
Thank
Ciao.
you.